Welcome to episode 2 of Pro Photo Supply's Local Visionaries. I'm Davin Mathis. I didn't introduce myself last time, so I kind of feel like I should. I work at Pro Photo Supply, if you don't know. And today we're very happy to welcome Joni Kabana. Kabana, okay. Make sure you get it right. Joni Kabana, who is a local Portland photographer. So first thing, I like to kind of know what I'm talking about before I do this, so I was looking up on your website and reading your bio, and I noticed you mentioned that you are most comfortable in a place that is unfamiliar to you. And I thought that's kind of interesting because I don't think most people would feel that same way. Like, I'm very comfortable in my living room. So what is it about being in unfamiliar territory that makes you so happy?
Oh gosh, I think it kind of traces way back into my childhood. And I had a pretty brutal upbringing. I witnessed a lot of kind of abusive things. It wasn't really done to me, but I witnessed it. So I was always trying to control my environment. And but through that, when I first picked up a camera when I was about 7, 8 years old, I was able to look at the environment. I was able to control it a little bit by having one still image from it. And I also learned how to traverse that environment with the camera. So from that early age, using the camera to be able to just go into environments that were difficult and then be able to understand them more, I think it just set the stage for me to say, okay, now what? Where do I go? Once I left home, where do I go? And I love going into environments that are very, very difficult, that put me into a place that I don't understand it very well, but then through that complexity and through the ease of a camera, how can I understand it more?
Excellent. So could you talk a little bit about your path toward becoming a professional photographer? Was this something that you set out to do when you picked up that camera when you were 8, or how did you come to be inspired to follow that as a career?
I wanted to be a photographer so badly. But my father said, absolutely, you cannot be a professional photographer. I mean, this was back in 60s, 70s, and you just didn't run off and become a photographer, especially the kind that I wanted to become, and then raise a family. So he refused to allow me to do that in college. I snuck into the photo labs, and I think Ben Brink was there, the Oregonian photographer at the time, and so we think we've probably passed in some of those photo labs. But I was a chemistry major, thinking that the chemistry, that I could understand how to process images better. And then after about a year of chemistry, I decided to become a psych major because I wanted to understand the human spirit. So I graduated with a degree in psychology, needed a job right away, didn't want to go back into grad school, and I saw a lot of people programming computers and they were loving their jobs and making a ton of money. So I went back and got some post-education. I became an assembler programmer where I programmed at the machine level, again, trying to understand that environment, like how does a computer work, and then set out for a 22-year career in high tech until one day, after I had 3 kids, and the first was going into college, I looked around and I'm like, I'm so not where I want to be. I was reporting to an amazing man at Standard Insurance, the CEO at the time. Liked my job, but I really wanted to become a photographer at last. Katrina hit right at the same time in New Orleans, and I saw people running in to get their photographs, and I just thought, if I don't do it now, when am I going to do it? I didn't have a lot of savings. I had taken my kids for many years in and out of different countries, but I quit, and I just went full blown into commercial work at that time.
But it wasn't until that time around Hurricane Katrina that you hadn't done any commercial work prior, or was it?
No, I had taken assignments here and there. I had published a book of images about a little girl's life in Madagascar. I mean, I always had the passion, and I always had the camera with me. But then I found myself turning down assignments because I didn't have enough vacation time.
Gotcha.
So I did have a little body of work, but not anywhere near to go out and embark on a commercial career. But that's what I did.
Excellent. So I noticed that a recurring theme of your work seems to be this focus on an individual story. Mm-hmm. And you always get at these big picture concerns, but it's always from that perspective of an individual. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really interesting. But I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about your process, and do you start with that individual story and then find the big picture, or do you start with the big picture and work backwards until you can find that individual story to document?
That's such a good question. I think it's kind of twofold. I definitely, there's a thread. Like maybe I'll see a movie or I'll see a painting or something, or someone will say something. It can be very, very simple, such as one time I was reading a book about Minor White's life, and it was all these essays that people had written. And I saw this little thumbnail photo of a man probably in his late 20s, and I kept looking at that photo and looking at it. This was before the internet, and I just thought, I want to meet him. And I don't know why I wanted to meet him, but I just had this insatiable desire to go find him. So it took about 6 months to find out where he was, and it was this man named Walter Chappelle. He lived outside of Santa Fe. Photo Eye Gallery got me in contact with him eventually. And I sent a letter, he called me, and here I am, a mother of 3 young kids, married at the time, and I get this call and he says, come down and visit me. And so I'm like, I gotta go. So I got on a plane, went down there. El Rito is way outside of Santa Fe. And I walk up and it's a hand-built house. The door's ajar. I knock. He says, come in. I go in. He's sitting buck naked on a couch in a yoga pose with long, white, beautiful hair. And I'm like, oh, that's right. He would be old at this time. But it led me into a world that was just so foreign to me. We ended up bringing him up to Portland. He did a lecture. I did several workshops down there. And it just goes on and on like that. I'll see something. It's usually minutia. It's usually just some kind of nuance that I'm attracted to, and I just go for it. Same thing in Ethiopia or Madagascar. It's usually something, an eye that I see in an image. I went to Bhutan because of the book Material World, where they showed the United States, the contents of the United States, a house, and then Bhutan on the cover. And so I saw that photo and I couldn't let it go, and I'm like, I have to go. So I brought he was 11 years old at the time, my son there, so he could see how people lived in Bhutan.
Yeah.
So I just do it. I mean, you don't have to have money. Don't have to have a lot of money. I always tell people when I'm consulting or teaching, you don't have to have a lot of money. You don't have to have a lot of time off from your job. There's so many ways that you can create these projects, and just go do it.
That's a perfect lead into the next question, because that's exactly what I was going to ask. What advice you have for people who want to do this kind of photography? I mean, whether it's photojournalism or humanitarian photography or even just travel photography, finding the time to do that. Obviously, you do commercial work as well, and so maybe you could talk about balancing that and being able to support, you know, what seems to be your passion anyway for humanitarian documentary work.
You know, I think it's the same in anything we do. I think if we approach it with authenticity and sincerity, it's going to have a difference. So the same thing with commercial work. I may not know how to do a skill, but I could hire someone, but I'll be upfront with that client. I don't know how to do this, but I know somebody that does. I'm trying always to be sincere in the work. And it's the same thing with the humanitarian side of things. If I'm sincere in what I'm attracted to when I'm photographing something, then it's going to work out. I think the worst reason that we can have is that we don't have money to be able to go do these things, because there's so many ways that we can build projects, we can rally. That word is so important to me. Rally around a cause, rally around a project, have people get interested in what we're doing, or find the people that are interested intrinsically in what we're doing, and then rally around it and go do it. I mean, you can always give prints, you can always sell cookies. I mean, you can do anything to get that money to be able to go. And it doesn't take a lot of time either. I think, again, if the human interaction, the engagement, if you're practiced in that and you're able to kind of get close to someone pretty quickly, then you don't need 2 years. You can go for 2 or 3 weeks.
Sure. So if you could sum up in a few words what frustrates you most about the world of photography or trying to keep your business financially sound, what would that be?
Oh, the most? I'm pretty lucky. I don't know if it's my business background or just staying kind of true to the course, but my business, the commercial side, is thriving to the point where right now I'm referring work. I feel very grateful for that. So I think that anybody, you know, here I am, I'm a middle-aged woman, you can get work. The work's out there. However, I think business philosophy and business plans have to change as we kind of go through different waves of photography and how things change. But what, if I could think of something that frustrates me probably the most, would be here we are trying to make a living with this amazing craft, and I see so many different photographers undermining each other or being so competitive where they're not able to help each other. And I think that's probably the biggest missing link that I see, is that there's a lot of competition, and rightly so, because there's only so many jobs. But in my case, it's like if I get something that comes through and it's like it's not quite exactly what I'd like to do, then but I could do it and it pays well, I'm going to refer it, because I just think that it's sometimes doing the right thing like that really kind of leads to other things. And so I do see a little bit of a tightness among our circle.
Sure. So obviously that affects competition at the commercial side of things, but what about doing work for humanitarian organizations? Like I know you just had that project with Mercy Corps. What are the challenges that have been brought about by, you know, the fact that there are so many photographers out there today? And do you find it challenging to educate those organizations on the value of your work and of bringing a photographer who actually knows what she's doing?
Yeah. You know, that's funny, because I've never come across that. I think when people see the power of what an image can do, it's right there. Yeah. So I've never ever had that, even with small organizations that can't pay. I mean, they can always give something, and sometimes all it is access to a subject matter. So the frustrations I think that I have when I work in the humanitarian side of things is that sometimes an NGO can only do so much. They can go so far. They've got their limits on their projects. They should have them very specified. And sometimes I think that when you see what happens outside of what their project does and where does it go, and if there's no place for it to go, it's difficult. Such as I just photographed a girl who's being educated in southern Ethiopia, and she's being educated through high school. But then what happens, she wants to go to university. Who takes over on that piece? And Mercy Corps is really great at looking at putting together projects that are sustainable, but they can only do so much and go so far. And so I always think about a crocus in the spring for some reason, because people are like, why do you go to these tough environments, Congo and Ethiopia and Madagascar and all these tough things that you see, and it's like, well, if we don't do something, I mean, it's like, even if the crocus comes up in the spring and it moves a little bit of dirt here and there, but it does come through the ground. And so I think we're just starting to plant some of the seeds and with some of the NGO work that I do.
Excellent. How have you had to evolve your business since the rise of digital photography? I mean, has that, obviously, when you started, it was all film. I mean, maybe not so much commercially, but when you first picked up that camera, obviously it was film. You learned on film. How has digital changed things for you, if at all?
I fought it. I'll be honest. I was asked to be a contract photographer for the America 24/7 series. And with that contract, they gave you a digital camera. They were trying to move film photographers into the digital world. I really didn't want to use that digital camera. And it was only until a friend came to my house and laid out 20 prints and said which ones are digital and which ones are from film, and I couldn't guess. So I went out on that project. I had a great time working with that camera. However, I think that especially with social media and the abundance of imagery that's out there, that's really been the most major change with my business strategy, is how do you stay afloat when there are, I mean, the environment's saturated with photos, and not only just photos, but really good photos. Call it what it is, you know, you put that Instagram filter on and everybody's screaming about, oh my God, they're not really a photographer because they have a filter. I don't care, that image is nice. And some of those clients, the major clients, are using Instagram photos. I just had a major client say, we're going to go with all Instagram on our website. You know, so what does that do? I can cry about it, or I can say, this is what we have, and I need to adjust. So with all of those people out there with cameras now, they need an instructor. So I do a lot of teaching, a lot of consulting. I have a lot of fun with Instagram. I think there's a place for it. I think, you know, actually Printstagram is going to be a major contributor and sponsor to my work in Ethiopia this fall, because I saw how they can create these tiny little wonderful books very inexpensively, and we're going to take them over, and they even have global delivery. So we're going to do a project with Instagram and Printstagram. And so I just think you just adapt with that and use it. It's great. It's so many tools that we have now.
Definitely. So you're doing commercial work, you're doing humanitarian work. I know you've had several books, gallery shows globally. And I'm going to add to that, you're a mother.
I'm a mommy.
How do you
3 kids.
How do you keep up with all of that? I mean, how do you not go crazy?
I don't. I go in and out. Like just 2 weeks ago, I was going to hire someone, and I have this saying: lifestyle over fame. And so it's like I want to make sure that I maintain my lifestyle, and that doesn't mean goods, you know, and purchasing things as much as how do I feel every day when I get up. And so I decided that it's like I want to peak. I want to take those larger jobs, fewer of them, and then go into my humanitarian, balancing the editorial magazine work and commercial with going off for 6 weeks and making no money at all. So I do think that at times I fall down and I say, oh my God, I need at least a personal assistant or somebody to help me out. But I usually tap, you know, one of my 3 kids. And, hey, can you guys help me? Or I do hire freelancers to help me a lot. Video editing, assistants, color correction, things like that. I do hire out, but sometimes I wish I did have somebody that was right there doing the billing and, you know, all of that stuff. But as soon as I get to that point, then I start thinking, do I really want to get into that large of a work style? I don't think so. I like kind of having it go like this.
Well, excellent. That was all the questions we had.
Okay, well, thank you.
Was there anything else you wanted to add, or?
No, I just thank you, Pro Photo Supply.
Hey,
you guys
thank you. It's been our pleasure. JoniKabana.com.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know you keep a blog on there, which is great. So if you want to follow along in any of the adventures, make sure to check that out. It's been a pleasure having you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.